So good morning, friends. This is Rajiv Bajaj welcoming you at Startup Change Leaders weekly event. We talk about the startup space, and today we have Mr. Aditya with us. He is founder of Yologram, and he has been in the world of metaverse and a lot of things. So. And today we discussed with him that, okay, let's understand the artificial intelligence, which is actually mind-boggling for us, and how this is going to impact our lives and the lives of the startup entrepreneurs, and how this is going to change the world. So over to you, Aditya. Please kindly introduce a little bit about yourself, and then we can start with the deliberations. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bajaj. Thanks for having me here, and truly a pleasure to be with everyone here on a Sunday morning. I'm the founder of Yologram Style, and what we do is we allow people to style their digital avatars, which is basically a digital version of themselves, with branded clothing and create content with it. So today, typically for content creation, you need to put on a camera and you need to either record a greeting or you need to record a video to someone. This you just of yourself, you speak into it, and then that avatar will wear digital clothing, which is branded, and it'll take, what do you call it, your input, which is voice input, and it'll speak that same speak the same words. And this could be done in different interesting scenarios. You could immerse yourself into different backgrounds. And so it gives you a feeling of virtually traveling. So you can immerse yourself into a New York City skyline, or you could immerse yourself into, I don't know, Machu Picchu, or the most fascinating backgrounds, and you can send it as a greeting, or you can just send it as a small social experience. The idea is we want to give people the fun of creating content where the imagination is what the limitation should be. I very humbly am speaking on this topic because I feel I don't know much about artificial intelligence. But the reason why I spoke to Mr. Bajaj and I chose this topic is, even though I have very little knowledge in artificial intelligence, it becomes the kind of our duty as startup founders to embrace AI. Because I was recently invited to a design conference, and in that design conference, I feel there were about 30 or 40 experts from around the country who came, who were from various design. And excuse me, I think someone, okay. I think there was some audio interference. Sorry about that. So, when I had gone for this design conference, one, I was fascinated by the breadth of people who joined. So most of the people were not technologists. So most of the people were creatives. They are people who are coming from the either creating designs or utilizing designs, or were generally in the creative space, were in business functions. So not AI coders or software programmers. These are people who are from the general space. What I was fascinated was that the amount of knowledge these people had about ChatGPT only as functional users, not because they knew how ChatGPT worked, but they knew how to use it. So today we do that a lot. We know how to use Google effectively in our business, but we don't know how Google works. And that's what's important. And that's the reason why I said it's important for us to embrace AI. The other reason why I chose this topic was because I was also a little, I found it very interesting that how some people are resisting AI. So, when we looked at this cohort of about 30, 40 people, there were about 5 or 10 people who said AI is nonsense, AI is nowhere, it can never compete with humans. And that's where I began to realize that some people are not seeing the big picture. So, to answer this question, if you look at some of the smartest people in the world today, if you look at Sundar Pichai, you look at Satya Nadella, you look at Elon Musk, Steve Wozniak, all of them today will tell you that A, we are at a fundamental shift in terms of what computing can do. And then B, they are also telling you about the dangers of AI, where, recently there was a paper signed by some of the leading people of the world saying that, if you give AI this kind of uncharted power, then, one day it could just be that a child goes up and says, how can I become the richest person in the world? And then AI says, okay, fine, you can kill everyone and you will become the richest person in the world. Here is how you can, source this and buy this ammunition and kill everyone. Or, it could even take action on it based on something it knows. It knows how to, detonate a nuclear reactor, for example. So, that is the kind of power that AI could technically do, because it is getting that kind of autonomous power. And some of these stalwarts in the industry feel that perhaps there is a need to pause AI, or perhaps there is a need to build guardrails around it. So there are two camps today. There is one camp which is headed by Elon Musk and by Steve Wozniak, where they've written a paper requesting for the research to be paused. And then there is another camp headed out by some of the leading AI professionals, where they say the minute you pause something, it is only going to cause harm. So it's probably important to build the guardrails around it. So that's the reason why I chose this topic, and that's the reason why I felt it was important that as startup founders, it's important that we embrace this tool. So what is fundamentally changed? We are now talking about a new kind of AI called generative AI. So in the past, the AI we were using was not generative. So you would basically, it would be predictive to a very small capacity. For example, when you do autocomplete in Google, when you're writing a word, it'll tell you the next letter, it'll tell you the next word. This is a very simple kind of generative AI where as you're typing, based on the other responses given by other people and based on how people are choosing. So, if I say, if I write a sentence that the cat is on the, and then the next word is mat, and most people are choosing mat, it'll give you a predictive response where mat is the next word. So that is basically how a large language model works, and that's how predictive modeling works, and that's basically the what ChatGPT today is. So all these slides are taken off the net. They are not my material because I'm not an expert in AI, but basically what tools like ChatGPT are doing is they are actually scraping the entire internet, and what they are doing is they are looking at huge amounts of text that they're being put in, which is like petabytes and terabytes of text. So, this is a screenshot from a video of IBM research, which I was seeing on YouTube yesterday, where they were telling us the difference between, how earlier AIs were individual models and now how we have this concept called a foundational model. So on the right side over here, you have, I'll see if I can do a little bit of annotation. So here, over here on the right side, you can see that earlier we used to make very small models of AI. So AI would be not general purpose, but they would be very either for text or for image or whatever. It was doing a very small function, and it was very good at doing that function. The advantage is that you have to give it less training data, and it's more accurate in the way it works. The counter to that, or what ChatGPT has done, is basically they have said that we will have a single model, which we call a foundational model. And this foundational model will be fed in with just text, a whole lot of text. And how do you do this text? You do automated scraping of the internet. So just like how you have bots, which are like crawlers that Google had invented for the purposes, search engine crawling. There are these scrapers where every single site it interacts with, or every single text it interacts with, or every single publicly available information like Reddit, Quora, things like that. It is scraping this text, and based on this text, it's going on feeding it into this predictive model, which says that, so for example, if there are sentences which say, then, the President Trump, and then suddenly it has President Biden coming up after that more often, then it now realizes that the next word after the word president is probably more relevant to use the word Biden right now. So that's how these predictive models are working. And like we mentioned on the left side, the advantage is that because they are dealing with such massive amounts of data, they have fairly good performance and productivity. The disadvantage is they require huge amounts of computing power. So, because you're talking about computing, processing, millions and millions of books of information out there, it requires huge amount of computing power. And of course, what also happens is it really doesn't know. So one very interesting thing about AI is that when I give you a simple, so when you look at the box above versus the box below, now look at the, when you look at these smaller boxes over here, think of these as, mathematical functions, for example. So let me just, I don't know. Okay, these ones. So for example, let's see the first box is addition. So we know that the parameters are, if you give it 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers, it'll do an addition of that. Suppose the second box is subtraction, the third box is multiplication. This is not really an AI, but I'm trying to give you an example of how a function is different from AI. In this case, we know exactly what the function does. The function does only one purpose. It's not general purpose. With AI, what happens is it's a general purpose. So we don't know what is it that the function does. We know what the expected outcome is. So basically what it does is, I'm really dumbing this down, but it's not this simple. But suppose it says 1 + 2 is 7, 1 + 2 is 9, 1 + 2 is 3, and then more people are choosing 3. It's starting to understand that 1 + 2 is 3. Then you give it different parameters, and that, so then it begins to understand what plus means, right? So it doesn't know it. You've not kind of prescribed what this plus function does. You've kind of given it a trend, and you've tried to explain it based on supervised learning, that this is what this function should do. That's what a foundational model does. It is a general purpose model. When you talk about the word chat GPT or GPT, it is basically what they call a general purpose technology. And this works with any kind of input that you give it. So, initially it will come up with garbage data because it really doesn't know what is the right answer. But because this particular thing is it's a general purpose, with time, with millions and millions of information, it starts to become more meaningful. So to give context to what I'm saying, there was this whole concept of crowdsourcing that came up a few years back, that, if you get the most intelligent person in the room and you get a crowd of 100 people, the average of what the crowd is saying is probably a better answer than what the most intelligent person is saying. And, this is so fundamentally counterintuitive to the way we think. But the law of averages of a huge crowd gives you a much better response versus a biased individual who's a very intelligent individual. So this is basically, the fundamentals of how AI is doing. So it's not that there is a prescriptive function that is being written to say this is what to do, but it's an aggregation of all these functions where it's kind of giving you a response, and it's predicting this based on all the past data. And this is historical data. This is thousands of books. This is millions and millions of lines of code that it has been fed. On the basis of that, it's giving you what it probably thinks is the right answer. And most likely it's right, because millions of people wouldn't have written wrong books. Millions of people wouldn't have written wrong answers to questions. So it's just this law of averages that it's picking up. And because it's got the ability to crunch this, massive amounts of data, it's probably able to give you fairly okay responses. The drawback of generative AI is, because it frames the responses in such a structured way, and because it frames the responses in a way that is convincing, very often the data is incorrect, but it's presented in a convincing manner, and you can just, cut, copy, paste. And, very often people have seen that they've used data from ChatGPT and Bard and things like that, and they've realized that the data is incorrect. So that's a fundamental flaw if we just blindly use data which is coming out of ChatGPT or Jasper, any one of these text-based sources. There is a possibility that whatever it has scraped, whatever it has predicted, there could be an element of error in its bias as well. This is another slide I've taken from the net, where they're talking about how you input a prompt, and basically how these kind of generative AIs work. One big shift that's happening, two big shifts are happening right now. So when we've seen ChatGPT, it's basically text-based. And then there is this new concept out there called GPT-4, which is multimodal, in addition to having more parameters. So, so there are two aspects to this. So, when I talk about a 3-parameter equation, that is like A plus B plus C. And if I talk about a billion parameter equation, that means I can take billion parameters and it can still give me a response. So one is GPT, when you're moving from GPT-3 to GPT-4, one is they moved from increase the number of parameters. So, it's not just that it'll take a response based on, your ability to frame the next word in a sentence. If you're only able to process 19 words and come up with the 20th word is a certain degree of accuracy. But if your ability to take in 1,000 words at a time, so if you can scrape 1,000 words, the 1,000 words from each page in each word that you have in your database, then your ability to predict the next word is much better if you're doing 1,000-word processing. So similarly, the number of parameters which have increased from GPT-3 to GPT-4 is again fundamentally much more. And also it's multimodal, which means that we're not just talking about text being a parameter, we're also talking about images, we're talking about music, we're talking, and there are convincing things on the net out there where you tell GPT-3 that I want you to write an ad script for me based in the words in which how Ryan Reynolds would speak. Now, Ryan Reynolds, for the context of all, is a famous Hollywood icon, and he vibes a lot with Gen Z and millennials. So if you're able to speak in that kind of a language, you'll get a good vibe and a good understanding from Gen Z audiences, and that's the power. And then in someone else, they recently showed that they gave a simple thing like a simple input like the word cats, and they said, how would Eminem, the famous rapper called Eminem, how would he rap it? And it came up with a fairly convincing way in which Eminem can rap it. And then there are other tools out there which can do music sequences, which can do beats, which can speak out. There are speech tools out there which can clone a person's voice with very little input. So what's really happening is that we are getting multiple tools out there. Like, for example, right here we have the concept of ChatGPT, and we've got the concept of Midjourney, which is an imaging tool. And when as entrepreneurs, when we're combining the power of these two, you can technically start making content, web pages more meaningful. Like, if you imagined something, you just have to give those parameters to Midjourney and it can do it. So, I almost thought that, maybe I should do this in a way where I should do a screen share and show you how Midjourney or DALL-E works, that, you open an account with Midjourney or DALL-E and you just give it like, a spaceman walking inside a crowded street in Daryaganj, and then you'll see, someone in a spacesuit with the background of Daryaganj, or any input for that matter. If you would like a famous, anything, Japanese politician in, standing in the US Congress, it can. So one aspect of that is your imagination is your only limitation in what you can create. The flip side to that is you can create a lot of fake information, right? So because the way in which ChatGPT can give out information, it can sound very convincing. It can sound in the style of, you can make it sound like, can you give me the style of an authoritative textbook? Or can you give me the style of a newsreader? So the way in which that text is presented can sound very, authoritative and prescriptive and give it a sense of credibility. Similarly, some of these images which can come out are so photorealistic and high quality that you can technically, like, there was this meme that went out where somebody had just created, an image of Donald Trump being, captured by the FBI, and it actually went out. And when there was a lot of speculation about what would happen on his arraignment, so some of these tweets and some of these images went viral because people really thought that he's actually been pinned down by the FBI and he's trying to resist them. So that's the power and that's the drawback that some of these tools can do, because as we are moving into an increasingly digital world, now, one thing that COVID forced us to do is that at least our communication, at least our interactions have now become increasingly digital. We are meeting digitally, for example. Now, I could technically have something called a deepfake technology where I could have my face being cloned by Elon Musk and I could have my voice being cloned by Elon Musk in real time. And we could feel like, rather than me giving this talk, it could be Elon Musk giving this talk. So that's the drawback in which some of these real-time ML models can do. And we have to be knowledgeable about that. And that's one of the reasons why, as founders, we have to realize that if, even if you're not doing what is it that can happen with the harmful effects, there could be situations where competition could be doing that, where they could make it seem like you are doing this, it's your voice, but it's actually competition which has used your text, your logo, your kind of creation to create that kind of content and just put it out there. So my point is not to focus on the negatives. I mean, you should just be aware of what is the capability of AI that AI can do today, so that you're more aware and you can just be better prepared. So this is a very interesting aspect where I saw this on the net where before phones, before the internet, and before smartphones, how was communication happening? And if you just think about this, most of us have seen these paradigms evolve, right? We have seen how we used to do business when phones were not that available, and then we had the whole concept of mobile phones where everyone, even during the day, was fully accessible. You don't have to sit by your landline and you didn't have to have a notebook by your side. Then you had the access to the internet, which said that, what is happening in the office, you have access to it at home as well. And you also have access to it when you're with your family and you're on vacation. And then the whole concept that, when you're on something like Groupware, which is like Google Docs, where everyone is collaborating at the same time, where you can tell someone in the office, can you update the stock? You can see the stock, you can make a meaningful decision out of that. And then you can talk to someone, you can talk to a customer, and the customer doesn't really know if you're on vacation or not. So this is basically what we're talking about, is paradigm shifts. And what is happening today is, this is the Kuhn cycle where I'm talking about, where we are at an inflection point where AI is a paradigm shift. Whether we like it or not, we should embrace it. Whether AI is fundamental to our business or not, it is a one-way street where there's no going back. So once the consumer as well as the customer gets used to this level of service level, they are not going to accept any less. So once we know that at one time it was very difficult to have business travel on train, because there was no predictability with train. You had to send somebody to the train office, and then he would spend the full day there, and even after that he may not come back with a response. And sometimes it was just simpler and it was just more convenient to tell somebody that, hey, I'll be there tomorrow for a meeting, I'm just going to buy a flight ticket. And flight tickets were far more expensive. And then when IRCTC came out, it was again an option where train could become an option for business travel as well. So what I'm trying to get to is that once you expect this level, you're not now today, if IRCTC goes down, you are fuming, because this is the minimum that you are expecting as a hygiene level that Indian Railways should be providing. So once the consumer starts to accept what is it that AI is capable of delivering, whether you're delivering it or your competition is delivering it or a disruptive startup is delivering it, that is the level of expectation that the consumer is going to start to accept. They are no longer going to get surprised by it. They are no longer going to get wowed by it. They're only going to. So if you're a budding startup and you're not evaluating and looking at some of these models, either in your service delivery or in your execution or in your internal backend, somewhere along the line, you are going to be evaluated, or you're going to be pitched against more dynamic companies that are using AI somewhere in their processes. So, the future of collaboration is really going to be, eventually you're going to be doing a lot of, AI driven work. So, even if you look at some of the, agencies today, digital agencies, they are moving from, rather than thinking that, AI is completely going to disrupt them, they are using AI as an augmentation tool, where they're saying that, we will still do your content creation for you. We will still do what is it that it takes to, generate the next post or whatever, but we're going to use AI tools to be faster and to be able to take on more customers at the same time, and things like that. So, eventually, as we move towards auto agents and as we move towards what we call auto GPT and things like that, where right now it's a back and forth. Like when you ask a ChatGPT a question, it gives you back an answer. Then you have to, again, on the basis of that response, you have to again ask a better, more qualified question. And people have played around with the API of ChatGPT, and they've come up with things called auto GPT or auto agents, where they're saying that the next wave is really about this back and forth activity happening autonomously. So can you tell me whom should I next contact for my sales? And then what that means is there are so many parameters to that question. So it'll have to know who have you already contacted in your sales cycle. So it'll query some kind of system, it'll get back, and based on those results, it'll try to trend and figure out who your customer set is. And then on the basis of that, it'll either make a forecast based on revenue projections of what your customer base is, or figure out what is the geography you're looking at. It'll pick up that data, come back, figure out who are the people who are available. So what are the personas you're looking at? It'll pick up that data, pick up their contact emails, and then come up with a list, as well as a kind of a cold call email introducing you, and all you need to do is press send. And I'm not talking about something that's going to happen 1 year from now. I'm talking about things which are happening right now as small tools where people have created this kind of autonomous activity. And all of this, in terms of the power of what an AI can do, and in terms of what people like us can do with AI, is going to be compounded by the effect of supercomputing. So the basic fundamental you can say the building block today of AI is there is the data which is available. So that is basically a function of scraping, where you're just going through the net and it's just manually scraping everything out there. The number of parameters that your model can take. So, as you're building it, you can increase the number of parameters, and of course the power of your computing. Now, what supercomputing does is it gives you this power available on tap. So, if I told you that there was a magical tap in your bathroom, where if you could just turn it up, you could get the power of Bhakra Nangal, that kind of gush coming into your bathroom. That's what the power of supercomputing does. That, there's an invisible pipe which is trillions of liters of water which can come to your bathroom, and for a second you can open it and that much of water can come out, whether you need it or not. That's the power available on tap today. And with the availability of supercomputing, what if you're trying to track what I'm trying to talk about, where the number of parameters of the model define how intelligent the model is, you can actually increase the number of parameters of your model too, if you have access to supercomputing. So this is where companies like Google really are sitting on a land, like a gold mine of data, right? They have access to all your Gmail, they have access to all the conversations, they know how to frame sentences, they know context of what is everything. And if we feel that ChatGPT is the latest and the greatest, I urge us all to track what is going to be revealed at Google I/O. I know that people have been not very impressed with what they have shown with Lambda, which is their AI model. But on May 10th, I'm sure that what they reveal in terms of AI will be groundbreaking, because these are some of the most intelligent people out there. And when they are saying that it's going to be more fundamental than fire, that means that, they really know what they're talking about. So one question is, will it really affect my industry? So whether or not, I don't think, AI, even though we can make AI autonomous, where it can keep doing work based on its own input. You're not really going to replace humans, but it's definitely going to make a difference. It's like saying that, if there are two banks back in 1990s or 1980s, and one of them was embracing computing and one of them was challenging computing. So, suppose you looked at a typical government bank who said, all our jobs are going to go away. We are going to resist we are going to resist computers because our job is to maintain the ledgers. The power of disruption is really also about upgrading, right? So humans are, I attended a talk recently where they asked me, is AI a disruptor or AI an enabler? And my answer was, a little tongue in cheek, but it was actually what I felt from deep inside, where I said that AI is an enabler to disrupt, because humans are, whether we take it in a negative connotation or a positive connotation, AI is essentially a disruptor and humans are essentially a disruptor. Now, if you look at it from a, if you're a benevolent, a legislator today, or a benevolent member of parliament today, and if you in your constituency you had 1,000 sanitation workers who were indulging in manual scavenging, and if you told them that I brought in this machine and these 1,000 people would lose their jobs, what is the right thing to do? Is the right thing to do to not bring in the machine and let them continue doing what they're doing? Or is the right thing to bring in the machine and enable them to find out alternate source of living? And that is basically what disruption does for us. Because once we are disrupted of doing manual tasks, or once we're disrupted of doing something which is predictable, we can upgrade ourselves and we can use our brains to think about the next level of what we can do on something which is essentially, you can say mundane, or you can say something which can easily be farmed out. So, when I went to the US and I was studying, I thought, there were two instances where I was surprised by the power of the brain. So, first it was I think it was it was one of the maths related or engineering related subjects. So, it was a calculator exam. And I said, I don't have to study for the exam because, you have all the functions on the calculator. And the point was that exam, even though it allowed calculators, it was not about using the calculator. It was about how you use your mind, because that's a function, right? Similarly, like how AI is a function. That when you give the input, you will get the output. But how do you use that? When do you call a sine function? When do you call a tan function? For example, I'm just giving examples, but that is where your mind is thinking at the next level, rather than just doing, what a sine or a cos or a tan function is. Now, similar to that is the concept of open book exam. So, when I first went for my open book exam, I thought the whole book is in front of me. I don't need to study for the exam. But the idea really is that the questions are framed in such a way that everyone, it's a level playing field. Everyone has access to the open book. So you have to really know the subject well to know where to look, which chapter this is residing in, because I cannot be skimming the book at that time to be figuring out where this lies, how this can be applied, and where is this example. So, that is basically what, AI is going to do to us. So when I'm talking about it affecting my industry, there are going to be many activities like this which are going to be farmed out to AI. And that will become the level playing field. So when startups come up where they'll disrupt or upgrade the thinking by saying, we can do this faster, we can do this immediately, and we can get you much better, better access to data, because we believe that this is what the crowds are thinking. This is what our algorithm has mined through all this crowded data and tells you that this is the next thing that people are wanting. That is kind of upgraded the whole industry. And if you haven't embraced that, somewhere in the line, you're going to be playing catch up, which is a tough game to be playing. Apart from all the variables that a business throws at you, right? There are so many surprises. Employees are leaving, customers are leaving. There are competition. There's disruptive forces. And then there is this whole concept that suddenly your competition is more agile because they're embracing AI. So, I've again taken another slide from the net where, depending on where you are in terms of technology, consumer finance, AI is going to be such a core component of the delivery or of the processing in the next 5 years, that it's important to be thinking about where it fits into your entire startup value proposition. So this is the concept of, where I don't wish to get technical, but this is the concept of autonomous AI. So, think about an autonomous car, right? So it has to, there are so many things happening. So it's got a camera, it's got multiple cameras all around. So it's not just that it recognizes something out there. So if it recognizes the building, it can't stop, right? It has to know that, oh, this is the building, I need to avoid the building. But if it recognizes an old woman walking on the road, then it has to know how to apply the brake in a safe mechanism where neither the people inside the car should get injured, nor the people behind, not the old woman, right? So it has to have knowledge of all that. It also has to know that if it's going to be braking and it's in the middle of an intersection, what should it do? Should it swerve to the left where it should cause minimum injury? So that is the level in which there is a recursive function where it is calling not just one input, it's calling multiple inputs, acting on it, and based on that, simulating different environments, going through those simulations, choosing which is the best possible simulation to go through. And this is basically what some people have done with, if you can Google the word auto GPT or auto agents, this is basically what they've done. They've used the API of ChatGPT to our GPT-4 to call, to get an input. Based on the input, generate a list of tasks. Based on that, prioritize the tasks, and then both the input as well as the output go into GPT agents, which are giving a response. So what I'm trying to say is I go back to that example where I said, whom should I contact next, which is such a generic question, or which customer should I contact next, and then it knows who I am, it knows who my contacts are, it knows what is my trend. So these are multiple iterations, right? It's seeming like a single question, but these are multiple iterations where it's querying the system, coming back, querying the system, coming back. Today I have to do it manually with ChatGPT, but this is a very simple process for a software engineer today. And that is the level in which we need to be thinking at least 3 months to 6 months from now, as this whole concept of automotive agents are concerned. And this is also the reason why some people are concerned about the power of AGI, or this is generalized intelligence or general intelligence, where this ability to learn from the output and then go back and then take another decision without the concept of manual programming, this auto learning. This is where where if the guardrails are not defined of what is it that ethical AI should do, it can really do that, right? So how can I be the richest person in the world? It's simple: eliminate all the other people, make sure I'm the richest person. How do you find out? How do you eliminate other people? These are the various ways in which you can do a biological attack, you can create a pandemic. So these are things where it has access to millions and millions of textbooks, whether it's biological or whether it's how to create a nuclear reactor or whatever it is. And then if given access to the wrong hands, so if your pure intention is to create terror, or your pure intention is to create havoc, then, or if you're in a mental state where you're not in control of yourself and you don't realize that doing something like this is harmful for society, you can technically cause a lot of harm by having access to such information. So this is where people like Elon Musk and all have talked about pausing the research. So in terms of tools, what I'm sharing right now are just 5 tools, and the list is forever, and it can go on forever and ever. And if you just research what is it that AI can do today, it's very, very powerful. So ChatGPT and GPT-4 I've spoken a lot about during this talk, which is basically about large language models. And the idea is that it knows what the next response is based on what you ask. So, if you ask a question, it kind of knows, it's seen that question somewhere, and it gives you an answer. And based on the sentences in the answer, it knows how to, make it into a paragraph or make it into a long chapter based on all the information that it has on the net out there. And as GPT-4 is moving towards a multimodal view, where it's not just text, it's also images, videos, all that. You're seeing all these examples out there of NVIDIA with text to pics and then text to video where, you give it a text prompt and it's giving you back a video. So what it can do in terms of the whole concept of, these digital agencies. So as we've moved more digital today, most agencies today, whether it's a digital agency, they're doing most of their creation on 3D tools. They're doing most of their video creation on tools like Adobe After Effects. They're doing most of their image generation on things like Photoshop. Now, the input to these tools today are basically, manual photograph, manual video, all that. But when you're giving it the power of something, when you're giving GPT-4 the power of creating a video based on all the images out there, all the videos out there, it can actually technically come up with a small video snippet. Just like how Midjourney and DALL-E can come up with a when I'm saying spaceman inside Daryaganj, it knows what Daryaganj is, it knows what a foreground is, it knows what a background is, it knows how to pick up the lighting in that scene. So it has figured out what Daryaganj is, it's figured out what a spaceman looks like, it's figured out the lighting of that photograph. So many times when we do these cut pastes, it's fake because the lighting is different, right? So when that spaceman was shot, he was shot in a different lighting, and that shot of Daryaganj was in a different lighting. So when that spaceman is overlaid over Daryaganj, it's fake. But now when, Midjourney and DALL-E have this information on how to relight. So, I can relight the spaceman as if he was physically standing there. I can resize that spaceman based on the general information I have about that image. I know the size of a lamppost, I know the size of a car, and I know what the size of a spaceman should be. And I know the context of where a ground will be. So it places that spaceman there, it relights it. And it's so convincing that you think that actually a spaceman was standing inside the Daryaganj. So, when we're talking about that kind of multimodal capability, ability to create videos, create deep fakes, all of that becomes immensely powerful, immensely dangerous, but that's available today. And we're going to see this just take off, skyrocket in the next few months. There are some tools out there called Runway ML, which is really so I spoke about DALL-E and Midjourney, which are essentially image generation tools. So these are today used for, creative works, but they could also be used for creating fairly convincing fake images which don't exist in real life. Then there's this concept of Runway ML, which is a host of different ML tools out there. ML is nothing but machine learning. And of course, there's a very powerful tool called GitHub Copilot. So what GitHub has done, so for those of you who are not familiar with the word GitHub, GitHub is a source code repository. So all your startups today, which have some kind of technology or software behind it, there is often a source code which is created to power what your startup does, which is what your software company does. And often the source code is present on something called a repository, which is an online repository, or it could be a private repository. And GitHub is the company which hosts the world's source code, and it was acquired by Microsoft. And they give you a tool called GitHub Copilot, which basically does, it scrapes all the, when I'm talking about scraping, what I'm saying is it learns of all the repositories out there. It goes into everyone's source code, learns it. And then you have to just give it a natural language input, like saying, can you make me a chatbot? And then it just knows how to make a chatbot. So, and you say, can you make me a chatbot in Angular framework? So it knows how to code in Angular. It knows all the repositories out there. It knows what a chatbot is. It'll just spin up the code for a chatbot. So what would typically take a software engineer a month to do, it'll give it back in a few seconds. So these are all tools out there where your technical software developers and your software architects should know about these tools out there. Similarly, for personal productivity, there is a tool called rewind.ai. And this is today available for Mac. It's a little scary. So everything that you're doing on your Mac or everything that you're doing on your iPhone, it's tracking that. And it's like, I don't know if anyone has seen the concept of, my activity on Google. So there is a concept called my activity on Google. If you search it, it actually tells you where you've been yesterday, what browser you've opened, every single thing that you've done on Google, if you have an Android phone. So where you visited, what you had done, which app you opened, what you had done in the browser, all of that is being tracked on My Activity. Rewind.ai is similar to that, but it's not necessarily defined to Google. It is doing a full tracking of everything you're doing, and at the same time, it's running a kind of analysis of it, and it's also making that queryable and instantly it can give you an instant response. So I can actually say that what was it that Aditya spoke about on Sunday about AI, and then you just give it that text, and if you are viewing this on a Mac today, and if you have rewind.ai, it'll actually go back to that Zoom call, and it'll either give you a summarized response, or you can go back to that time on your computer and it'll show you that video. It sounds very sci-fi, but this is what they claim. I have never used it, but it's a very powerful tool. One of the reasons I haven't used it is I really don't know what they are doing with our data. So, one has to be mindful of, when people are scraping your data, where it'll be used tomorrow, and who's actually the founder behind these, and will it be misused tomorrow? Because you could be doing something seemingly innocent today, but it could be seen as something in a very different light if it's mined and analyzed in a different way. For personal productivity, once again, there is browse.ai, which is also like a research tool which can let you know anything about anyone. So you can do you can give it the context of any website, or you can give it the context of LinkedIn, and then you can ask it a question, and it can technically query that site, or it can query that page, and it can give you responses in natural language. And there's another tool out there called Tome, or Tome, I don't know how it's spelled, and this can basically spin up presentation based on the input you give it. Say, I want to talk about this, you give it the input parameters, and it'll create a full presentation for you. So, I have limited it to 5 because there are millions out there, and it depends on what is your use case, and what is your business about, and where are you really looking at leveraging AI and embracing it. But my request to every founder out there is that even though AI is very far from replacing humans, I think that is not the question we need to be asking. We really have to be in the situation where, rewind back to the days where computers were coming to banks, or where internet was coming into if you looked at a travel agency that can work with internet and a travel agency that can work without internet, just see what the power is, right? Think about a travel agency today, typically working on a computer which is isolated, where they have to make a telephone call, check with one. So someone says, hey, give me the best hotel in Jaipur. And you have an AI, not necessarily AI, you have an internet tool. It's querying all of Jaipur, giving you availability, and giving that person a real-time answer on the phone. And then think about the other possibility where the travel agency doesn't have access to the internet. You're making manual phone calls to every hotel out there. And some of them you're getting positive responses, some of them they're picking up the phone, some of them they said they'll call you back later. And see how much more efficient you are. So, that's the power of what AI can do, and that's where we really need to be thinking. Similarly, if you're talking about a production line in a factory, think about how efficient you could be if you had a machine that was automated doing the same thing versus a human, where perhaps human can be more effective in things like QC, but in a fundamental manufacturing world, what the efficiency that, whether it's in terms of sorting or in terms of packing or anything like that you can get out of a machine is much more consistent. And I think the key is consistency, because that's really where the level playing field is going up, the paradigm shift is going up, and you need to be at that level of consistency where everyone else, including your competition, is going to be. So I'm going to stop right here and invite any feedback, questions, and also criticism, because I'm not really an expert on this topic.
Thank you, Aditya. Any questions?
Hi, Aditya. First of all, thanks a lot. Really insightful for a beginner like us.
Thank you very much.
Really, puts our thinking caps on. Now, you said something that Chat GPT or Chat for GPT, whatever it is going to it's going to collect data based on responses. So right now, it doesn't have any responses, so it's going to churn out junk to us. Is that what you're saying?
So there's a concept called hallucination which happens today. So I can ask ChatGPT to write me essay or write me a rap lyric about AI, right? So this does not exist. This is totally artificial. So it has spinned up this rap lyrics based on its imagination. Similarly, if I ask ChatGPT to say, tell me the evolution of molecular whatever biology. Now that is not something which you can have two ways about. But the problem is it uses the same tool. It uses the same predictive tool to come up with something which is imagination and something which is fact. So the problem is that because it presents it in such a convincing manner, that sometimes, even though it's telling you the history of molecular biology, which should be all factual, it could be scraping some data which is junk data, and it could be presenting it in a very convincing format. And you may think this is convincing and you can reutilize it either in a scientific paper or you can reutilize it in your presentation somewhere, but there could be a flaw in it. So you need to be mindful. But if you use ChatGPT today and ask it most questions, I feel it is fairly 99% accurate in most of its responses, and you'll be surprised by the kind of responses it gives you.
Yeah, we used it, but we were not too excited because we were trying to look for some data based on petrochemicals and chemicals, the field in which we are in. And it repeatedly kept on saying, I don't have this data, I cannot, answer you. And we got frustrated. And we tried various options to, reframe our questions. We went from Indian market to the US market to the European. We thought probably we'll have data over there. But he didn't throw up anything. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Is it a limited kind of a knowledge he has right now, or is he building on his knowledge every day, or what is it?
So the earlier version of ChatGPT had a limitation of search results till January of 2021. Then recently it had an upgrade where it has results of February 2023. So there is a limit to, it will not have current data because it will have only historical data. That's the way in which the mining happens, and that's how it gets more intelligent. But at the same time, there are some limitations where it will not do anything predictive. So, if you were to ask it, what will be the price of Bitcoin tomorrow or Reliance Industries 1 year from now, it cannot give you an answer because it's built to not give you that kind of answer. But, when I have asked it questions like market share data of apparel brands in US, it has given me fairly convincing data. So, but I haven't really fact checked it, but it gave me, it gave me in decreasing order depending on the revenue of each apparel brand out there. So I was quite amazed by the responses, but yeah, maybe your experience has been completely different, and I'm sure that could be a limitation today in ChatGPT.
Thanks.
Thank you for this session. So how will we know, like, suppose, for example, if I'm searching for a best coffee estate in Coorg, whether that result is correct or wrong?
Most likely that result is scraped data, right? So it could either it's scraping reviews or it's scraping, if someone has written a coffee Bible, it's picking it up from there, or it's picking up data based on search results. All three could be wrong. And how you define best could be very different from, but it may give you a response, and maybe that response is meaningful to you. But the point is that we can't take bets on these responses, but it can give us a focus area where we can be looking at. Suppose it's completely off in the response. Either you can requalify the response by asking a more pointed query, or you just realize that the data that it's scraping is just not meaningful to the kind of question you're asking.
Okay, Aditya, you covered this point very well, that the people thinking about job loss, or people thinking about that AI is going to take over their space and things like that. But still, I think there is always, whenever there's a discussion about AI, there's always a fear in the minds of people that eventually AI tools may try and create a lot of disruption, and may create a lot of havoc with the jobs of people. In fact, ChatGPT has already affected few content creators who were making good money out of it. So how do you look at this scenario?
So it's basically the interaction, right? So if you talk about a big company, if you look at a company like McKinsey, where a lot of their data comes out of knowledge systems, and a lot of their data is spun up based on scraping this information. I don't think that their business will be affected, because when you're looking at a partner of McKinsey, he has gone to Wharton with somebody, and so it's a relationship-driven business, and there is a certain amount of credibility that someone comes in. So it'll be McKinsey utilizing ChatGPT to come back with better responses. One would have thought that you can get a better input, you can get a better response out of ChatGPT, which may be true, but those are not the industries where a lot of human relation and human interface, or human back and forth is concerned. That is going to get replaced. But if you talk about 2 people startups, 4 people startups, smaller companies, where they are performing a very small function, because that's how a startup initially starts. They perform a very small function and then they scale up. They often get replaced. And if you think about it, if you were to spray DDT, or you were to spray an insecticide, you will not hear the mosquitoes dying, right? But if you were to take a machine gun and kill dogs, or you were to kill animals, you'll hear them all crying. So that's what happens in the startup industry. When you're so small and you're getting disrupted and you're not going to go on to LinkedIn and say, oh, my startup got disrupted, I have to close down business. So when these small things are getting disrupted, half the time we don't realize. So there is a thing in the startup world that 99% of the startups fail, but you never hear about their failing. You only hear about the 1% who move to Series A and move to the next stage. Yeah. So this disruption is definitely happening on the smaller scale startups, where you don't really have a relationship. You are using a startup because they were more efficient, or they were more cost efficient. And ChatGPT is able to do that same function for you free of cost, or at a price maybe $49 a month if you go for their their Pro edition. That is really where the disruption is going to take place. But that is also where the opportunity lies, because if all your competition is going to get disrupted because ChatGPT is offering what essentially your startup is doing as a service, how can you utilize that to up the game, because you have more knowledge than ChatGPT and you have more qualification power than ChatGPT. So why not embrace ChatGPT into your function, or any AI into your function, so that when the customer presents an AI as your alternative, you can already say that, hey, we're already using this AI, and we are able to do more with it because we understand both your side of the business as well as the technology side of it. I don't know if I answered your question, but I feel that it's not going to, in a lot of our jobs which are human related and relationship driven, there is not going to be that much of a switch. But where a lot of the dependents are transactional and functional, where you're using one particular organization for a very small function, and that small function can be repeatable and can be re-emulated by something like a function like this, there is a possibility that 6 months from now, 1 year from now, either the startup has to upgrade themselves or get replaced by these kind of bots, if you may.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you said it all, that small people, when they vanish. Nobody makes a noise. So that's the reality. Okay. Any other questions? We just have 1 or 2 minutes left. Anybody with any questions?
Hi,
Okay.
Rajiv. This is Gyanu. I have a
Hi,
question for
Gyan.
Aditya.
Yeah.
Um, at what point do we start trusting these bots, these AI agents to do things for us? I mean, other than the repetitive tasks and stuff like that. But I'm just curious because I'm in the world of cybersecurity, and obviously there are these disruptors or people who are attacking now. They're using AI to build better attack surfaces. So I'm just curious, at what point do you rely on AI to handle uh, a disruptor who is trying to use AI against your own organization?
So pattern recognition is something they're very good at. So I think they will be able to spot the patterns better than we can. So they will probably know a way in which, they can, we know the traditional things like denial of service and all, but they probably know of smarter ways in which, they can detect this pattern. And the good thing about a foundational model is we don't really know how it works, but it knows the answer. So I think that there are companies out there like Human Loop and all, which say that we can make you make better sense of AI tools, because we can help you build the guardrails around it. We can help you define how something is factual or not. So those are tools available and startups available where they're leveraging the power of these large language models. But to answer your question, ChatGPT also gives you a tool to check if homework was created by ChatGPT. A lot of these deepfake companies give you a tool to check if a video is a deepfake or not. So I'm sure that, if someone is using an AI tool, and if it's an ethically built AI, I'm sure there is some kind of a tool available to check if this, bot attacking you is a real bot or is it a human. And the point is that it's a recursive game, right? So once that algorithm is out there to check for the bot, then the bot becomes more intelligent and then knows how to trick that algorithm. So it's a very interesting space you're in, and it's a very interesting question, but I am not an expert on AI, so I don't have an answer to it.
Gyanu is joining from Dubai, and he is heading, I think, some of the biggest IT companies or something. Gyanu, can you just
Thanks, Rajiv. I
introduce?
wouldn't call myself as heading the biggest one, but yes, in the region. But it's a very good answer, Aditya, and I think we're actually pushing the boundaries, so to speak, with the products that are being built. So it's definitely going to be an interesting space as AI gets into almost every industry. I think you also showed the industries that are going to be impacted with it, and I don't think anything would be left out. Besides, there's always the other aspect of all of us who are sort of technically enabled or technologically enabled will probably make the transition very seamlessly, whereas people who are just barely touched by technology, it's going to be an interesting transition for them. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting next set of years for us.
Absolutely. So yesterday I was at an event where we were discussing digitization, and somebody from Infosys was there. And the kind of disruption it's going to be for the next few years is going to be phenomenal. So let's be witness to. We are lucky that we are going to be witness to all this change. Okay, thank you very much for joining, and thanks Aditya for a very insightful discussion on a topic which is kind of a black box for many of us. I think we are all watching how this is going to affect the startup world and the entrepreneurial journey of everyone. So thanks a lot, and do join Startup Change Leaders for regular interaction on such topics. And we only talk about startup and anything and everything which touches the startup world. Thank you so much. Thanks,
Thank you
Aditya.
very much
Thank
for
you.
having me, and exciting times ahead. Let's hope this was meaningful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone. Thank you, everyone.